46 meters beneath the sea off Sicily, your camera light catches one clay jar, then another, then hundreds. They are the cargo of a Roman merchant ship unseen for more than 2,100 years. Tonight, from a warm survey cabin 3 miles offshore, your task is to make the first careful map of everything the sea has kept. Nothing is to be lifted, nothing is to be hurried. The wreck has waited through the rise and fall of cities, through generations of fishing boats crossing above it, and through more than 20 centuries of winter currents. It can wait while you check the time, sharpen a pencil, and begin a new page in the survey book. The boat holds its position about 3 miles from Mazara del Vallo. From the working cabin, you can see the harbor lights scattered along the Sicilian coast. They appear and disappear behind the slow lift of the water, small gold marks beneath a sky that has not yet decided whether to keep the last blue of evening or turn fully dark. Inside, the cabin is warm. 2 monitors glow above a narrow desk. A coil of cable passes through a padded opening in the stern and descends into the Mediterranean. At the other end is the camera sled, moving gently over the seabed. Its lights have made a pale circle in a world that, until very recently, belonged only to fish, sand, and time. Lucia, the senior archaeologist, sits beside you with a tablet balanced on one knee. She has spent the afternoon checking coordinates, batteries, depth readings, and weather reports. Now she places one finger against the edge of the left monitor. "Start with what is certain," she says. "You write the date. You write the depth. You note a wreck of the late Roman Republic, provisionally dated between the 2nd and 1st centuries before the Common Era. You record hundreds of amphorae, most of them of the form archaeologists call Dressel 1A. You add 2 lead anchor stocks and another lead structure not yet fully identified. Those are the facts the sea has permitted so far. Everything else remains an open question. No one yet knows the ship's name, if it ever had one. No manifest has been found. Its port of departure and intended destination are still uncertain. Even the year of its sinking waits somewhere inside a layer of sand, a maker's mark, a fragment of timber, or a sealed trace of cargo. Your job tonight is not to fill the empty spaces with certainty, it is to preserve the shape of the question. The camera drifts forward, a small striped fish moves through its beam and vanishes beyond it. Behind the fish, the amphorae lie in a long mound, their narrow necks and rounded shoulders repeating across the seabed. Some stand at angles, some rest on their sides, some have broken, allowing pale sand to collect within them. Others appear complete beneath their fine coats of marine growth. At first the field looks disorderly, as if the jars had been scattered at random. Then your eyes begin to adjust. Rows emerge. A curve appears along the western edge. The cargo still remembers the vanished hull. You mark the first cluster on the digital grid. Lucia numbers it Area A. The camera operator reduces speed until the sled barely seems to move. Every few seconds, a photograph is taken from a slightly different position. Later, software will find the shared points between the images and join them into a 3-dimensional model. For now, each frame is only one small window. The work has a soothing precision. Frame, number, position, note. Frame, number, position, note. The boat shifts beneath you, but the grid remains steady on the screen. The generator hums under the deck. Water brushes the hull with the soft, irregular sound of cloth being folded in another room. You have joined the project recently, and this is your first night responsible for the primary log. All afternoon, you have worried that your handwriting will become cramped, that you will miss a measurement, or that everyone else aboard will recognize some important detail before you do. Yet, the first page is already filling neatly. The act of recording makes the large discovery manageable. A ship lost for 21 centuries becomes one observation and then another. The first amphora you study closely is nearly as tall as a person's leg. Its body narrows to a pointed foot, made not to stand by itself on a flat floor, but to fit among other jars in the hold of a ship. Ropes, wooden racks, brushwood, and neighboring vessels could keep a cargo packed tightly together. A pointed base could be wedged into a layer below, while the shoulders supported the layer above. The design tells you something simple about the ancient Mediterranean. These jars were made to travel. Dressel 1A amphorae are strongly associated with the movement of wine during the last centuries of the Roman Republic. Their forms changed over time, and those changes now help archaeologists date the places where they are found. A rim, a handle, and the angle of a shoulder can become a kind of calendar. The jar has no written year on it, yet its clay remembers the hands and habits of its period. You zoom in on a handle. Tiny shells cling to one side, a thread of weed sways from the other. There may be a mark beneath the growth, but tonight's camera cannot settle the question. You enter a short note and resist the temptation to write more. Lucia notices, "A good record leaves room for tomorrow," she says. The sentence eases something in you. Archaeology is not a contest to produce the quickest answer. It is the patient work of preventing a true answer from being lost. The camera passes over the crest of the mound, and the scale of the cargo becomes clear. Reports have placed the number near 500. From the monitor, it is impossible to count them in one glance. They overlap like roof tiles in an old town seen from a hill. Each jar once required clay to be dug and prepared, a potter's wheel to be turned, a kiln to be heated, handles to be attached, and a surface to be checked before transport. Each may then have passed to a vineyard, a warehouse, a dock, and finally the hands that lowered it into this hold. One vessel can contain the labor of an entire landscape. You imagine the coast in another century, not as a certainty, but as a possibility, assembled from ordinary details. Somewhere, perhaps on the Italian peninsula, a kiln cools before dawn. Finished amphorae stand in rows, warm clay holding the faint mineral smell of earth and smoke. A potter taps each rim and listens for a clear note. A flawed jar sounds different and is set aside. The good ones continue toward the road. At a farm farther inland, grapes have already been cut from the vines and pressed. The work is seasonal and familiar. Baskets arrive, sandals cross a courtyard, wooden tools are rinsed. The new wine is not a treasure in the way later stories will imagine treasure. It is harvest, trade, payment, hospitality, and supper. It is the result of weather watched carefully for an entire year. At a port, jars are checked again. Seals may be pressed into wet material around their mouths. Names or symbols may be painted or scratched where a merchant can see them. Dock workers carry each amphora with practiced balance. One hand near a handle and another supporting the body. The pointed foot that seems inconvenient on land finds its purpose among the ranks in the ship. You watch the real jars on the monitor and let the imagined harbor remain gentle and incomplete. No surviving evidence has yet named this ship's vineyard or captain. There is no need to give them names they did not leave behind. The cargo itself is enough to bring back the rhythm of loading. Lift, step, lower, wedge, and return for the next. The camera reaches the southern edge of the site. Here the amphorae thin and a dark line emerges from the sediment. Lucia leans closer. The operator holds position while the water carries a faint cloud of sand past the lens. The line broadens into lead. One of the anchor stocks lies partly exposed, heavy and straight, with marine deposits roughening its surface. The wooden parts of an ancient anchor may disappear, but lead can remain. A second stock rests elsewhere at the site. Together they suggest the practical equipment of a working ship, not a ceremonial object and not a legend. This vessel had to wait outside harbors, hold near coastlines, and trust its anchors while cargo and weather were considered. You trace the visible edge on the grid. The shape is easier to follow than the overlapping jars. It brings a different image to mind, a crew approaching Sicily under a broad late afternoon sky, lowering sail, feeling for depth, and preparing to anchor. The island would not have been a distant border to them. It stood near the center of routes joining Italy, North Africa, Iberia, the Adriatic, and the Eastern Mediterranean. For merchants, sailors, farmers, and port workers, the sea was not empty space between important places. The sea was the road. Above you now, that road looks almost black beyond the cabin windows. A fishing boat passes at a respectful distance, its white light rising and sinking. Someone on deck checks the cable angle. The winch answers with a brief low turn and then becomes quiet again. Near the anchor stock, the camera finds a patch of open sand. Lucia asks you to mark it carefully. Empty space can matter. It may show where part of the hull collapsed, where cargo shifted, or where currents have moved lighter material. You outline the patch in blue and add a question mark, the smallest symbol on the page, and perhaps the most honest. The official teams will return for more documentation. Specialists will study the archaeological context and decide how best to protect it. They may take samples one day. They may identify clay sources, residues, construction details, or marks that sharpen the date. But the site is safest tonight when it remains undisturbed. Its value lies not only in each object, but in the relationship among all of them. An amphora removed without a record is a jar. An amphora preserved in its place can be part of a ship, a route, a cargo, and a moment. That is why the first people who recognized the site did something more important than bringing up a souvenir. They reported it. A private discovery became a protected question for everyone. The restraint of leaving the objects where they lay allowed the wreck to speak in its own arrangement. You look again at the field on the screen. Before this evening, you thought discovery meant taking hold of something hidden. Now it seems closer to making a promise, to look closely, to disturb as little as possible, and to pass forward what you have seen. The next survey line begins at the eastern edge. The camera sled turns slowly, and its light sweeps across the amphorae in a wide arc. For one moment, every exposed rim casts a shadow. The jars resemble open windows in a drowned street. Then the sled settles on its new course, and the shapes become cargo again. You number the frames in sequence. The repetition makes the hours feel spacious. There is time to notice details without forcing them into a conclusion. A broken handle lies between two complete jars. A small octopus has chosen the mouth of another as shelter. A pale sponge covers a third in an uneven patch. Marine life has not treated the wreck as an ending. It has made the old cargo part of the seabed. Fish pass between objects once touched by Roman hands. Fine sediment gathers and lifts. Water enters every open vessel and leaves it again. The ship is no longer traveling across the Mediterranean, yet the Mediterranean continues moving through the ship. At the cabin door, the captain sets down 3 cups of coffee and a plate of bread with sesame seeds. The smell reaches you before you turn. Lucia wraps both hands around her cup, but keeps watching the monitor. You take a piece of bread, warm from the galley, and brush loose seeds into your palm so they do not fall into the keyboard. The ordinary food feels right beside the ancient cargo. Most history was lived between meals, loads, repairs, lists, and watches. The people connected to this vessel did not know they were becoming an archaeological period. They were completing the day's work. You think of the ship when it was new enough for its planks to smell of resin. Its hull was roughly the length of several small fishing boats placed end to end, reported at about 21 meters with a beam near 6. It was large enough to carry hundreds of jars, yet small enough that every sound of water against timber would have been familiar to those aboard. Perhaps there was a cooking place protected from the wind, coils of rope kept where hands could find them in darkness, and spare sailcloth folded beneath a covering. Perhaps the crew slept near cargo worth more to its owner than the ship felt comfortable carrying. These are possibilities, not recovered facts. What is certain is simpler. A working vessel was built, loaded, sailed, and lost. Its cargo remained. On the monitor, a measurement scale projected by the camera lies across two rims. You enter the figures. The software begins joining the first photographs in a small preview model. At first, the result looks like a cloud made of colored points. Then a shoulder forms. A handle appears. A second jar takes shape beside the first. You rotate the model carefully. The seabed can now be viewed from above, then from the side. The objects have not moved, but the record allows the eye to travel around them. Lucia smiles at the screen. "There is your first piece of the ship," she says. You know she means your first contribution to it. The nervousness you carried aboard has thinned without your noticing. You have not made a dramatic discovery within the discovery. You have done something quieter. You have kept the sequence accurate. You have left room for tomorrow. The survey proceeds north. At this end, sediment covers more of the site. Only the upper curves of some amphorae are visible, a series of half-moons under the lights. The arrangement suggests more cargo below. No one aboard guesses how much. The temptation to turn every buried shape into a complete jar is set aside. You record only what the camera shows. Farther on, the third lead structure appears. Its purpose is not yet settled. It could belong to the vessel's equipment, but the night does not offer enough detail. You describe its position, visible length, orientation, and surface. Then you stop. The unknown object receives the same care as the recognizable ones. Outside, the moon has risen behind thin cloud. A silver path moves from the horizon toward the stern, breaking wherever the waves lift. Mazara del Vallo is now a low band of light. The city has lived by the sea through Phoenician, Greek, Roman, Arab, Norman, and modern centuries. Though the people within each century simply woke, worked, ate, traded, repaired nets, told stories, and went to rest. The wreck below belongs to one chapter, but the water above it has touched them all. You leave the desk for a few minutes and step onto the rear deck. The air smells of salt and diesel, and the night is mild. The cable enters the water beneath a small work light. It seems almost impossible that such a thin line connects the boat to a landscape hidden 46 meters down. The deckhand checks the protective sleeve where the cable crosses the rail. His movements are unhurried. He has checked it many times already, but repetition is part of safety. You hold the rail and feel the generator through the metal. A steady vibration traveling up from the hull. Somewhere directly below, the camera moves above jars made before this harbor carried its present name. The distance is less than the length of a city block, yet it crosses 21 centuries. When you return to the cabin, the software has added another band to the model. The wreck's outline is beginning to show. The long mound narrows at both ends. The pattern is not a perfect silhouette because wood has decayed, cargo has settled, and currents have worked across the site. Still, the ship can be sensed in the negative space, like a leaf remembered by the mark it leaves in stone. Lucia opens a map of ancient sea routes beside the growing model. She does not draw a line for this vessel. That would suggest more certainty than the evidence allows. Instead, she points to Sicily's position among the coasts. Whatever its route, she says, it did not sail through an empty world. Ports ringed the water. Ships carried wine, oil, grain, ceramics, metal, cloth, tools, letters, news, and people. Languages crossed on docks. Measurements had to be understood. Contracts had to be trusted. A jar shaped in one region could be emptied in another and reused somewhere else. Trade was not a clean line between 2 points. It was a web of repeated crossings. The wreck is one knot in that web. Why was it sailing? The cargo gives the simplest answer. It was almost certainly making a merchant voyage, carrying the season's wine from the people who grew and packed it toward the markets, taverns, and household tables that would receive it. The ship was not chasing treasure or carrying a secret. It was doing ordinary work between shores, moving a harvest from where it had been made to where it had been promised. You consider the question that has followed you since the first amphora appeared. Where was the ship going? Perhaps later study will narrow the possibilities. Clay may be matched to a production area, residue may confirm what a vessel held, stamps may identify a workshop, the distribution of other jars may reveal a familiar route. For tonight, the most truthful answer is that the destination remains beneath the surface. Strangely, the unanswered part no longer feels like a failure. A careful mystery is not an empty space. It is a boundary drawn around what can be known, protecting the real story from an invented one. The camera begins its final pass. It travels lower now, giving the model overlapping views of the cargo's western face. A conger eel withdraws slowly between 2 jars. The operator pauses, allowing it time to move. Then the sled continues. Frame, number, position, note. The rhythm returns. Your pencil moves steadily. The cups cool on the desk. Beyond the glass, the water lifts the boat and lowers it again. Below, each pulse of the current passes across clay that has outlasted the vessel's crew, the republic they knew, and almost every building that stood along their route. Durability can seem like the heart of the discovery, but the jars survived because so many softer things did not. The wood opened, ropes disappeared, cloth, baskets, names, and voices left no clear shape. The clay settled into sand. Its survival is both a gift and a reminder to treat absence carefully. You cannot restore the crew's conversations, but you can notice the hand-sized spaces between the handles. You cannot name the weather that ended the voyage, but you can record the anchors that once offered safety. You cannot say who waited for the cargo, but you can understand that someone did. Near midnight, the last survey line meets the first. A green mark appears on the grid where the route closes. The camera has covered the planned area without touching the wreck. Lucia checks the file count against the log. You read the sequence aloud, slowly enough that each number can be confirmed. Nothing is missing. The operator raises the camera sled a few meters above the seabed before recovery. From that height, the lights reveal most of the mound at once. The amphorae stretch through the blue-black water, close, packed, and quiet. The anchor stock lies beyond them. Fish hover at the margins. Around the site, untouched sand continues into darkness. For the first time, you can see the wreck, not as a collection of details, but as one held shape, This is what was found after 2,100 years. Not a golden chest, not a palace beneath the water, and not a message written for the future. It is a merchant vessel's ordinary work preserved so completely that ordinary life has become extraordinary. Hundreds of containers, the equipment needed to stop and wait, the outline of a hull, evidence of people moving useful things across a connected sea. The answer feels gentler than treasure and more human. The camera begins its ascent. The amphorae shrink together, their individual forms becoming a textured island inside the circle of light. Then the light tilts away, and the sight returns to the darkness that protected it for so long. You save the primary log in two locations. Lucia checks the file names, then asks you to sign the paper copy. Your name goes beneath the final entry, small and ordinary beside the size of the history below. It does not claim ownership. It records responsibility. The model will need many more hours of processing. Archaeologists will return. Questions about the vessel's date, origin, cargo, structure, and destination will be tested against better evidence. Measures will be taken to protect the site. Nothing has been completed tonight, but something important has begun correctly. You close the survey book. On deck, the cable rises with beads of water racing down it. The winch turns at an even pace. When the camera sled reaches the surface, two crew members guide it into its cradle and secure each latch. No ancient object comes aboard. The jars remain together below, where their arrangement still holds meaning. The boat turns slowly toward Sicily. Its wake opens behind the stern and then smooths into the surrounding sea. The harbor lights gather into clearer lines ahead. You sit near the cabin door with the closed log resting against your leg, feeling the small satisfaction of work finished without being forced. You had hoped at the beginning of the night to be the person who noticed the decisive clue. Instead, you learned the value of a faithful record, an unanswered question, and a site left whole. The discovery does not need you to make it more dramatic. It needs you to make it less likely to disappear. The old ship has already completed the hardest part of its journey. It has crossed the distance between being lost and being known. The remaining journey is careful, image by image, measurement by measurement, season by season. The wreck will give up its history at the pace good evidence allows, and until then, the sea continues to keep it. Later, when the working lamps have been switched off, you remain in the cabin while the boat follows the dark coast home. Only the navigation instruments glow now, soft green and amber. The engine has settled into a low, continuous note, and the hull answers the water with small sounds along its sides. The survey book lies closed on the table. Beneath its cover are the depth, the positions, the visible forms, and the sequence of every image. There is nothing more to add tonight. The pencil rests across the top of the book, no longer needed, ready for morning. Outside the window, Sicily moves slowly past. One harbor light becomes two, then three, then a short line reflected in the water. Farther inland, the land is dark. The boat keeps to its calm heading. A cup sits in the holder beside you, warm enough to hold, its surface trembling faintly with the engine. You let the wreck return in memory without asking anything more of it. First one amphora in the camera light, then another. Then the wide field of clay resting under blue water. The images arrive more slowly now, free from measurements and notes. The jars do not need to be counted again. They remain below in their long, settled arrangement. Sand supports them. Water passes gently through the broken ones and around the complete ones. Small fish move between their handles. The old anchor stock rests beyond the cargo, heavy and still. The sea moves at every level. Near the surface, the boat rises and lowers. Far beneath it, the current bends a thread of weed and carries a few grains of sand over the mouth of a jar. The movements are different in size, but they belong to the same water. The engine keeps its low note. Water touches the hull and falls away. The coast draws nearer without hurry. You sit within the warm cabin, carried toward the harbor, while the survey site remains behind in the dark. There is comfort in knowing that it has not been emptied. Nothing had to be taken for the night to matter. The best part of the work was leaving the story together. Below the waves, the amphorae rest shoulder beside shoulder. Their pointed feet are settled in sand. Their rims hold small circles of darkness. Some lean against one another as they may have done in the hold. Others have found new support from stone, sediment, and marine growth. The wooden hull is mostly absent, but its shape lingers around them. A curve along one side, a narrowing near an end, a quiet boundary formed by what remains. The cargo remembers the ship. Inside the cabin, the instruments hold their steady colors, green for the course, amber for a small switch near the door, a dim white line beneath the map. Each light has one purpose, and each remains where it belongs. The cup warms your hands, the seat supports your back. The closed book keeps the night's work. There are no more choices to make. The cable is secured, the camera rests in its cradle, the files are saved, the vessel knows the way to harbor, and the people on watch are awake at their stations. You can simply travel with them. One ship did not return. Its wake vanished like all the others, but its cargo descended together. The sea received it without knowing that centuries would gather above. Sand moved in, marine life arrived. The jars became shelter, surface, and part of the landscape. Tonight a circle of light visited them. It moved carefully from one end to the other, then lifted away. The darkness returned, but it was no longer the darkness of something entirely forgotten. A map now exists, a record has begun. The site is known and watched over. That knowledge requires nothing from you now. It can settle with the book on the table. It can remain as quiet as the cargo itself. The engine continues beneath the floor, steady enough to disappear into the room. Once you notice it, it is there. Once your attention moves elsewhere, it becomes part of everything. The faint vibration in the cup, the soft rattle of a latch, the gentle pressure of the seat, the long forward movement of the boat. The hull meets one small wave, then another. Water gathers, brushes past, and is gone. Another small wave arrives. The cabin lifts, settles, and continues. Ahead, the harbor lights grow wider apart. As the distance closes, their reflections stretch toward you, break into pieces, and join again. Gold on black water, then darkness between, then another quiet line of gold. You no longer need to follow each one. The boat will pass between the harbor marks when the time comes. Ropes will be made ready, the engine will lower its voice. For now there is only the even passage along the coast. Your mind returns once more to the first jar, not to its date or measurement, but to its simple shape in the light, a narrow neck, two handles, a rounded shoulder, clay made useful by a pair of hands. The form repeats beside it, and then repeats again until the single vessel becomes part of a cargo. One jar, then another, one image, then another, one quiet observation placed beside the last. This is how the ship came back into knowledge, not all at once, though the first sight must have felt that way. It returned through attention. A report made, a position shared, a team gathered, a camera lowered, a light carried down, a page opened. Now the page is closed. The light is raised, the sea is dark and whole again. You rest while the coast approaches, the warmth of the cabin stays around you. The instruments remain soft and steady. Beyond the glass, night lies over the Mediterranean. And far behind, beneath 46 meters of moving water, The old cargo rests within the shape of the vanished ship. Sand beneath it, water above it. The anchor beyond it. The long, quiet arrangement undisturbed. There is time for the questions that remain. There will be other surveys, other images, other patient pages. The route can wait to be understood. The marks can wait to be read. The clay can wait beneath its thin covering of sea life. It has become very good at waiting. The boat moves on at an even speed. The wake softens behind it. The cabin light stays low. Your hands loosen around the cup as its warmth becomes part of the room. Nothing more is required tonight. The work is safe in the book. The camera is safe in its cradle. The wreck is safe beneath the sea, and the water continues along the hull, gathering in a soft rush, thinning to a whisper, and returning again as the boat follows the lights home.